On a tranquil morning that belied the tragedy to come, three young sisters vanished during their brief stroll to school, a distance of just half a mile from their family home. For 14 long years, the quiet town of Fairview, Ohio, lived under a shroud of whispered rumors, persistent suspicions, and an oppressive silence, until a hidden tunnel, long overlooked, finally yielded its dark secret, exposing the community's most harrowing truth. On the morning of May 6, 1993, the Carter triplets, Ava, Lily, and Nora, aged 7, stepped out of their modest brick residence, a routine they had followed every weekday since the beginning of second grade. These identical sisters, whose bright laughter echoed through the serene streets, were familiar figures to nearly every resident of Fairview. Their parents, Denise and Paul Carter, often stood at the threshold, watching with tender care as the girls departed hand in hand, their plaid skirts swaying gently above their knees and their backpacks snugly secured. The school lay less than half a mile away, a journey that typically took no more than 5 minutes, a distance considered safe within the close-knit community. In Fairview, where trust in the neighborhood was paramount, parents rarely allowed young children to venture far alone, but this path was well-trodden and familiar. Dozens of children from surrounding blocks followed the same route, and the triplets usually joined a small group. However, on this particular morning, the other children had already proceeded ahead. Denise Carter leaned against the doorframe, her gaze lingering on her daughters as they chattered animatedly and skipped along the dirt road, their braids bouncing with each step. The early spring air carried the fresh scents of dew and lilacs, painting a picture of normalcy on this bright morning. Satisfied, she closed the door, poured herself a cup of coffee, and settled into the familiar task of folding laundry. By 8:20 a.m., however, a shadow of concern crept in. The school bell would have rung by now, and her daughters should have been seated at their desks. A call from the school secretary at 9 a.m., inquiring whether the girls were ill, shattered her calm. Denise dropped the laundry basket in shock and immediately dialed Paul at his workplace. Within 20 minutes, Paul raced home, and together they launched a frantic search through the neighborhood. Their voices rang out, calling the girls' names as they knocked on doors and pleaded with every neighbor they encountered. Fairview was the kind of town where trouble seemed a distant concept, a place where keys were left indoors, ignitions remained unattended, and children roamed the nearby woods with carefree abandon. Initially, the prevailing assumption was that the triplets had simply wandered off, perhaps distracted by a stray puppy or lost in a game of make-believe near the creek. But as noon passed without any sign of them, the police were summoned. Sergeant Mark Donnelly, a father himself, responded with a sense of urgency that matched the growing panic. By the time he arrived at the Carter home, neighbors had already begun scouring yards and alleys, their concern mounting. Denise clutched a cherished Easter photo of the triplets, taken just weeks earlier, and approached every searcher with the same desperate question. "Have you seen them? Did they pass your house?" Investigators quickly established a timeline. The girls had left home together at 7:58 a.m. A neighbor across the street confirmed seeing them laughing and holding hands, while another resident, gardening by her fence, recalled spotting them a few minutes later near the old drainage tunnel along the dirt road. After that, the trail grew cold. The tunnel, constructed decades earlier for water runoff, was a structure both feared and whispered about by local children. Wide enough for them to crawl inside, it was avoided by most due to its dark, ominous opening, half concealed by tangled roots and ivy. Older kids spun tales of snakes or lurking strangers, and Denise had always sternly warned her daughters to steer clear. Yet on that fateful morning, a witness swore she saw the girls glance toward it, their giggles carrying on the breeze. Search teams ventured into the tunnel within hours, but it narrowed after just 20 feet, offering no clues. No shoes, no backpacks, no cropped ribbons. By afternoon, the sheriff's office escalated the effort into a full-scale search, bringing in bloodhounds and deploying helicopters to sweep the nearby woods. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through every yard, field, and creek bed within a mile radius, their determination unwavering. The community rallied with a unity reminiscent of a bygone era. Men left their jobs, women baked food for the searchers, teenagers plastered flyers across town. Yet the triplets seemed to have vanished as if swallowed by the earth itself. The media descended swiftly, captivated by the haunting story of three identical sisters. Television vans lined the streets, their cameras panning over the Carter family's modest home, the empty swing set in the yard, the driveway where three bicycles leaned against the fence. Denise's tear-streaked face became a fixture on every news broadcast that night as she pleaded, "Please, if anyone has them, bring my girls home." Police interrogated neighbors, registered sex offenders in the county, and even close relatives, meticulously examining Paul's work records, Denise's daily routines, and the family's financial state. They found no evidence of marital strife, debts, or enemies, only the inexplicable disappearance of three little girls who had set out for school and never arrived. The days that followed blurred into a relentless cycle of hope and despair. Leads emerged and faded. Rumors of a stranger's van parked near the road, a sighting of three girls at a truck stop off the interstate, a caller claiming to have heard children crying in a nearby motel. Each tip was pursued with vigor, only to dissolve into nothing. For Denise and Paul, time warped into an agonizing limbo. Their home transformed into a command post, filled with the constant ring of telephones and the static of police radios. Posters of their daughters appeared on utility poles, in diner windows, and at highway rest stops. Denise snatched sleep in brief intervals on the couch, clutching the stuffed rabbit that had belonged to Lily, while Paul paced the kitchen, alternating between snapping at officers and offering apologies. By the end of the first week, investigators confronted a grim reality. There was no sign of an abduction, no ransom note, no communication whatsoever. It was as though the girls had stepped onto that short stretch of dirt road and simply dissolved. The case consumed Fairview, prompting parents to hold their children closer and children to abandon their walks to school. Doors were locked even in the daylight hours, and the once innocent town was gripped by a pervasive unease. Rumors multiplied like wildfire. Some whispered that the triplets had been taken by someone they knew. Others muttered that the drainage tunnel was cursed, and a few speculated that the girls had been seen playing near the creek days before, perhaps falling in, though exhaustive searches of the water turned up nothing. By the end of the summer, the flyers were bleached and curling at the edges, the search efforts dwindled, and the Carter family was left in a hollow silence, staring at 3 empty beds and 3 unopened school books, 3 lives that had seemingly evaporated. What lingered most vividly in the minds of Fairview's residents was the image of the tunnel. Every child passing by in the months that followed turned their head away. Parents issued more stringent warnings, and Denise, during her desperate daily walks, felt her chest tighten with an unshakable conviction. She couldn't prove it, but she was sure the answer lay within its shadow. How could 3 children vanish in broad daylight, seen only moments before, less than half a mile from home? This question haunted Fairview for the next 14 years. Then, in May 2007, a county work crew tasked with clearing brush along that same road stumbled upon a chilling discovery near the tunnel's mouth. Roots from a fallen tree had dislodged a chunk of earth, revealing something pale and rigid in the soil. At first, the backhoe operator mistook it for a pipe, but upon closer inspection, he recognized fabric. The crew foreman promptly contacted the sheriff's office. Within an hour, the road was sealed off, yellow tape cordoning the area as deputies crouched by the tunnel entrance. What they unearthed was not a body, not yet, but fragments. A scrap of plaid fabric, eerily reminiscent of the Carter girls' school uniforms. A child's Mary Jane shoe faded and cracked with time, its strap still buckled. And farther in the soil, the outline of small bones, buried shallowly, yet pressed hard into the earth, as though sealed by time itself. The news spread faster than officials could contain it. By afternoon, residents gathered along the road, whispering and craning their necks, some clutching their own children as if reminded of a danger they had long convinced themselves was past. When Sergeant Mark Donnelly received the call, he sat in silence before driving out. 14 years had passed since he had crawled through that tunnel, flashlight in hand, mud soaking his uniform, swearing that if the girls had gone inside, he would have found them. Now, staring at the grim discovery, he felt the old weight settle back onto his shoulders. The evidence was carefully excavated and sent to the state lab, where advances in DNA testing since 1993 promised new insights. Within weeks, the lab confirmed that the fragments belonged to one of the Carter triplets, though determining which was challenging due to the partial remains and the passage of time. The conclusion was chilling. The girls had not wandered away or been taken to another state. Something had happened right there, within sight of their school. Denise Carter, now living in a small rental house on the town's edge, separated from Paul but still wearing her wedding band out of habit, was the first to receive the call. She dropped the phone when Detective Carla Jennings, newly assigned to the case, delivered the words, "We've recovered remains near the tunnel." Denise remembered nothing after that, except the raw, animal sound of her own voice echoing through the kitchen. Paul reacted differently. When officers informed him at his job, he slammed his fist into the wall hard enough to split the skin over his knuckles. Co-workers pulled him back, but he stormed outside, lit a cigarette, and muttered repeatedly, I told them they missed something." Fairview reeled once more. For 14 years, the town had tried to fold the story of the missing triplets into the past, but now it was raw and unhealed. Vigils were held at the church. News vans returned with their satellite dishes rising over the tree line, and the tunnel became the focal point of every whispered theory. Detective Jennings began her work with a sharp, methodical eye, knowing the case file was massive, thousands of pages, hundreds of tips, but also aware that 1993 policing had been an era of limited forensics and heavy reliance on hunches. Her first step was to re-interview surviving witnesses. Helen McCoy, now 75 and still living in the same house near the path, sat stiffly at her kitchen table as Jennings recorded. Her memory remained sharp, and she reiterated seeing the girls glance toward the tunnel, giggling. But she added a new detail, something she hadn't admitted in 1993. There was a man, she whispered, wringing her hands, standing by the telephone pole across the road. I thought he was waiting for a ride. He was there one moment, gone the next. I told the officer, but he waved me off, said everyone was seeing shadows back then. Jennings noted it carefully. Why hadn't this made the official record? The discovery also reopened old fractures within the Carter family. Denise had always believed the tunnel held the answer, begging officers in 1993 to dig deeper, while Paul suspected someone they knew had lured the girls, pointing fingers at neighbors, co-workers, and even Denise's relatives. The marriage couldn't withstand that weight. Now, with proof unearthed, those suspicions reignited. Paul confronted officials publicly, demanding they admit their failure, while Denise spoke at a vigil, her voice shaking. We told you where to look." Jennings pressed forward, her focus shifting back to the Holloway family. In 1993, their eldest son, Jason, a troubled 19-year-old with a criminal history, had been a source of rumors. He had moved out of state soon after. Jennings tracked him down, noting his evasiveness and requesting a DNA sample, though the Holloways defended him fiercely. The community began to fracture under the weight of the past. Some neighbors were angry that the police hadn't listened in 1993. Others whispered that reopening the case only stirred old ghosts. Parents who had been children during the disappearance now kept their own kids away from the road. Each evening, Denise walked to the police tape, standing silently, as if her presence could summon her daughters back. In the second month of the renewed investigation, a lab report shifted everything. The bone fragments, though degraded, revealed traces of a chemical compound embedded in the marrow residue, inconsistent with natural decomposition. Analysts suggested it could be linked to industrial runoff from the drainage system. Had the girls been forced into the tunnel, trapped there, or was it used as a hiding place long after their deaths? Jennings called Donnelly into her office. "This wasn't just a disappearance," she said. "Someone put them there, and someone wanted them to stay hidden." Donnelly's jaw tightened as he stared at the report, murmuring, "I missed it." The reopening of the Carter case became official on June 14, 2007, with a press conference on the courthouse steps. Reporters filled the square, and Denise sat in the front row, her eyes rimmed red but unblinking. Jennings stood behind the podium, deliberate and composed. "We have recovered human remains near the drainage tunnel along Ridgeway Road. DNA testing has confirmed they belong to one of the Carter children. Further excavation is ongoing. This case is now an active homicide investigation." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Denise rose, clutching the Easter photo. "I told them in 1993 to dig at the tunnel. They didn't, and now one of my babies has been found in the dirt." Her words stung, landing on the sheriff's office and the town itself. Jennings set up a task force, reconstructing the original case. Inconsistencies troubled her: van sightings, a boy's dismissed Creek account, Helen's new detail. Inviting Donnelly as an advisor, they re-interviewed Ridgeway residents. Jason Holloway's name persisted, leading Jennings to confront him. His shaky alibi and criminal past fueled suspicion, though evidence remained elusive. Community fractures deepened as new tips emerged, some useful, some wild. Forensic analysis linked a solvent to a nearby machine shop owned by a Holloway cousin, suggesting the tunnel hid evidence. Denise's relentless interviews and Paul's growing anger split opinions, while Pastor Samuel Green struggled to unify the town. Jennings deployed cadaver dogs, uncovering a knotted rope near the Holloway shed, though lab results were inconclusive. By September, media scrutiny intensified, and Denise received nationwide sympathy. Jennings theorized the case involved not just a killer, but a conspiracy of silence. An anonymous Polaroid of 3 backpacks, dated May 8, 1993, shifted the investigation, leading to a sealed maintenance chamber where the packs were found, containing hair and matching twine. The discovery implicated Earl Dwyer, a 1993 maintenance worker who quit abruptly. Interrogating him, Jennings noted his defensiveness. A whistleblower, Frank Miller, revealed the original sheriff suppressed Dwyer leads, while Carol Peters admitted missing maintenance records. Dwyer's property revealed a chamber with ribbons, suggesting the girls were held alive briefly. Charged with murder, Dwyer denied involvement, but Jason's letter to Pastor Green, confessing knowledge, cracked the case. Jason admitted following Dwyer's coercion, detailing the girls' entrapment and 2 deaths, though the third sister's fate remained unknown. Trials in December 2007 convicted Dwyer to life and Jason to 25 years. Denise vowed to find her missing daughter, while Fairview, scarred but remembering, sealed the tunnel with a plaque honoring the triplets.